Greetings and a warm welcome from me, astrologer Patrick Arundell. Today, in the latest of my deep dive videos, I'm going to explore the significance of the winter solstice 2023. In the southern hemisphere, it's the summer solstice. How does this play out in terms of the astrology? It really is quite fascinating. I hope you find it will be too. Please stay with me as I go through this. I'll also be sharing with you how the Western tropical astrological calendar is divided into 4 quadrants or quarters, hugely important. And therefore this event actually provides a background influence for the next 13 weeks right through to the spring equinox. I'll share with you the natal event chart, which in PISCES has an ascendant in Scorpio, really interesting. Mercury very, very close to the Sun. What does that mean? But I'll also share this event in terms of a solar event chart that we can all collectively relate to, and that pictures the Sun into house 10 in Capricorn, along with Mercury and, of course, Pluto. If you're new to my channel, thank you so much for joining us. This is genuinely very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please share them. I interact with each comment, but also people interact with each other too, which is so lovely. If you're a returning visitor, delighted to have your company. Thank you so much for your likes, comments, shares and subscriptions. If you've yet to subscribe, I'd be honoured if you did so now. If you've yet to watch your year 2024 deep dive video for each of the 12 signs, please see the link beneath this video. I recorded these some while ago, and I feel that these will give you a real structural foundation to work through your year, including, of course, the eclipses. If you're interested in ascending above zodiac astrology and embracing more serious astrology, and you'd like to know what year 2024 holds for you, I can share your transits with you. Please give me your time, date and place of birth, and I can prepare for you your completely unique report. But if you also order your character analysis, you'll get 30% off, and also free your zodiac booklet, your Chinese booklet and Indian Vedic booklet of all the 12 zodiac signs for the year ahead. Please see the link below too. So in the northern hemisphere, the winter solstice occurs on the 22nd of December and the summer solstice on the 22nd. But in the north, at 3:28 universal time, that is the moment that the sun makes its way, ingresses into the sign of Capricorn. Now, if you are interested in astrology and you know what a chart wheel looks like, you'll know that we have 4 angles which are incredibly important. The one that most people seem to focus on is the ascendant, but actually the ascendant is not more important or less important than the other angles. They all are incredibly powerful. But the ascendant represents how we first connect to the world. And in Western tropical astrology, that is the spring equinox. That brings the sun into the passionate fiery sign of Aries, its new beginnings, and takes us forwards for 13 weeks until we get to the summer solstice. Now that's the equivalent of the 4th house in the natal chart, where we want to retreat, focus much more on our inner world, on nurture and protectiveness and security, and of course is Cancer. So the sun powers into Cancer, ruled by the moon, but another cardinal sign. So very much to do with executive power, a lot of authority, but also a lot of initiative. But that initiative is very protective. And that 13-week period takes us up to the autumnal equinox. And that's the sign of Libra. The sun moves into Libra. And here, even though it's in its fall, this is our opportunity to set our boundaries, be more aware of who we need to be combative with, but also how we work on our relationships and interactions with others. And that 13-week period takes us up to now, the winter solstice. So the reason this works like this in astrology is, to be honest, because astrology is a Mediterranean construct. And at the time of when it developed, Australia wasn't consciously part of the more evolved world. And of course, there are different types of astrology that will look at things in different ways, but Western tropical astrology is based on the fixed seasons. So the knockers of astrology will always say Western tropical astrology doesn't take into account the precession of the equinox, the tilt of the Earth's axis, and therefore is about 24 degrees out. That's a different form of astrology called sidereal or Vedic. And it's not that Western tropical astrology is right and Vedic is wrong. A lot of astrologers use an interweave between the two systems, and that can be very valuable. But for the purposes of Western tropical astrology, which I practice, this is an incredibly powerful event because the sun reaches in that birth chart the 10th house cusp. So that's the most visible part of the chart. When I'm working with a client, whatever planet or asteroid or position is very, very close, like a fixed star, to the 10th house cusp, that tells me a lot about that person's way of connecting to the wider world, how they feel about status, how they feel about work, goals and ambitions. Is their chart more northern hemisphere orientated or ironically southern hemisphere, through the diurnal planets that start from Libra and go right the way around to Pisces? So this is so important because it's really the sign of culmination in the physical world. So if you think about the sign of Capricorn, it's earthy, so it's realistic. It can be to do with property, structures, because it's ruled by the strict Saturn. So it's very much about timing, but it's also about more conservative and more established methods, big institutions, powerful people. Our line manager at work, our parents, anyone that we have to manage ourselves, where we would be the Capricorn figure and someone is managing up to us. But it is a lot to do with our attitude to how we want to garner respect and admiration. And it's a very serious sign, Capricorn. So a seminal moment. So we need to look at those two charts to see what they tell us, because it is incredibly fascinating. So first up on the screen we have the Placidus chart, which is the event chart in terms of natal, based on Greenwich, and the ascendant is Scorpio. But the 7th house cusp, just underneath that, just marginally in the 6th house, you'll see Jupiter. The planet's very much to do with optimism, bountifulness, expansion, but of course it is in retrograde. But critically, in this chart, it's in the 6th house, which is very virtuous. And Jupiter's benevolence can be used to help others in a practical way. So when we're relating to people, if we mean it and we're passionate, Scorpio, but the way we relate, if we can try to find areas to help one another, that will be very useful through the next 13 weeks. But the sun, you will see, is very, very close to Mercury, but in a way, not close enough. The irony is Mercury is 1 degree and 32 minutes away, but the sun is applying to Mercury. So later on the 22nd, the sun will exactly meet Mercury in an inferior conjunction, and that's known as a GEMINI. So it means Mercury is in between the sun and the earth. And that can be a very notable and very helpful event. So it's called an inferior conjunction because Mercury's in a retrograde. But if we go back to earlier in the day when this event occurs, which is going to provide the blueprint for the next 13 weeks, actually in traditional astrology, this is known as a combust, which means that the sun is so powerful that it can override the energy of Mercury. Mercury already in retrograde is rethinking, and has been since the 13th of December, how it approaches things like business, property matters, but also what we're seeing on the world stage is a lot more authoritarianism, I feel, and not in a positive manner. Because Saturn represents the established order, we're seeing people use power through weapons to impact on other people's situations in a very unhelpful way. Now, this has been going on in the Ukraine for some while. And because Pluto's getting right to the end of its journey in the sign of Capricorn, we have seen over the last 15 years or so an excessive use of power by people who hold the levers of it. But of course, we've got other agendas developing, which are much more liberal and much more in favour of things being more open. But we are seeing a lot of very authoritative power. And that is not necessarily a good thing, whether it's through social media where people get, their Facebook taken down for absolutely nothing, or we're seeing Twitter is being run with much more of a political agenda, or we're seeing conservative politicians around the world, whether it's Hungary or Slovakia or in the USA, all pushing back against the more liberal agenda of the more developed countries that, for example, wanted to support Ukraine. Now we're hearing much more people saying no, we're not wanting to join in with this. And of course that suits people like Putin perfectly, because they want to hold on to power. So with Mercury retrograde so close to the Sun but not close enough, what we could have over the next 13 weeks is a lot of very intense communications, a battle for our attention and to persuade us in a way that suits that old money, those suits, the people who want to dominate us. So that's the more negative, cold side of Capricorn. But of course Capricorn also has very positive virtues: wisdom, experience, established formulas which have worked for a long time. We should never ignore those things just because they seem a little unsexy and not so responsive. So we can still embrace this next 13 weeks in a positive way to, for example, continue to try to grapple with the increase in the cost of living that every single person has seemed to have experienced. And we can use our experience and knowledge, or talk to people who can give us their viewpoint to guide us in a way to try to improve the situation. And the unique thing about this event is that though communications could be strained, if we look at the position of Saturn, which is the ruler of the sign of Capricorn, it actually links beautifully to both the Sun and Mercury. So what Saturn in Pisces is saying is we need to develop and work hard at compassion, at feeling things. It shouldn't just be about the material world, Capricorn. It should be about how things feel. So I think that Saturn is actually informing this event very positively in those sextiles. But also, the two most important influences in astrology are the Sun and the Moon, the luminaries, and they're actually in a wonderful alliance. The Sun at 0 degrees Capricorn in an exact 120 degree enabling trine with the Moon at 0 degrees in Taurus. And also Jupiter, remember, in that 6th house is pretty close to the Moon. So Jupiter and the Moon are providing some uplift to the Sun, the retreating Mercury, but also they're forging, in the case of the Moon, a lovely sextile to Saturn too. So we mustn't see the Mercury combustion as being an entirely bad thing. It could be that some of the people that are being very stridently negative and resistant to working in a more collective and collaborative way, Aquarius, are going to be really challenged by the time Pluto moves out of Capricorn in this penultimate cycle it's in on the 21st of January, Pluto's birthday, with the Sun. We also have a conjunction between the Sun and Pluto on the 20th in Capricorn, so that could be a pivotal day. And of course Mercury will go direct on the 2nd of January, but return back to Capricorn on the 13th of January and emerge from its post-retrograde shadow on the 21st of January. So my prediction is we are going to see a more progressive agenda come through, but initially it's going to be a lot of resistance, and we're going to be watching images of people suffering on the TV in the most appalling ways, and people are being very tribal and very political rather than thinking about the more human component, which is what Saturn is going to encourage them to rethink over this 13-week period. Now, we've also got an opposition between Venus in the first house in Scorpio, technically detrimented here, but very intense. And Scorpio feels things deeply, but it is in an opposition with Uranus itself, detrimented in its fall in Taurus. So Venus can be about money, but it can be about personal appearance, and it can be about food. So that opposition could see some intensity around relationships, around finances. Scorpio very much to do with longer term finances, but also if you're single but would like to meet somebody, well, maybe this can turn out to be quite a feisty but intense and very magnetic seasonal event for you, and see you drawn towards someone that you find very, very hard to resist, even if it turns out to be a little bit of a fling, because when Uranus is in the mix, things are not necessarily particularly stable. Now, the midpoint between the Sun and the Moon is in house 4, which of course is very much in keeping with that more Cancerian energy of protection, and it's very close to Saturn. So that's an interesting footnote, that if we take this chart in terms of its overall perspective, I'm not talking about genders, I'm not talking about sexuality, I'm talking about every one of us has an element of masculine and feminine energy, and the balance of this chart is Piscean in the 4th house. So in terms of our connection to the wider world, how we view resources and property, our jobs, we still need to feel good about it. That's so essentially important. So on the screen now, I'm showing the event chart from a solar perspective, and you can see that puts the Sun and Mercury along with Pluto in house 10, the sign of Capricorn. But it does mean that the midpoint goes into house 12, very contemplative, very much to do with withdrawal, and very, very close to Saturn. So whatever our connection to the world, that theme of having to feel that it is comfortable is very consistent between the two charts. The other thing I'd say as well is that because we do have Jupiter, the Moon and Uranus all in the sign of Taurus, it's clear that we're all going to be continuing to grapple with trying to be perhaps a little bit thriftier with our finances, moving energy suppliers or phone contracts to chivvy off a little bit more cost so that we're running that much more efficiently. But in a way, that's what the sign of Capricorn is about. It's about being businesslike, but businesslike with feelings. That's what I feel that we all need to be over the next 13 weeks. Please stay with me as I go through each of the 12 signs from Aries through to Pisces, which you can relate to in terms of your sun or your ascendant. For you, Aries, I feel that you could spend quite a lot of the festive season having some really big discussions about how you are going to go forwards around your career, around your business, if you are an entrepreneur or you work for yourself, if you provide services. If you do work in a big institution like a hospital or a prison or a governmental department, this event really shines light on your role. And of course, with Mercury retrograde and being afflicted initially on this day by the Sun, I feel that you've got a lot of food for thought to work through. And part of the reason for that is that Saturn, the ruler of the sign of Capricorn, since it moved into your 12th house on the 7th of March, has really been asking you to eliminate anything from your life at a psychological level that doesn't work very well. But because Saturn's about structures, it could be that you're sticking with a job because that's the structure that provides the income to run your life. And nobody's suggesting that you should be rash. And remember, the sign of Capricorn is very much about caution, but I think you do have to tune into that more psychological dimension of your nature. You're a very instinctive sign. I don't feel that gets anywhere near enough coverage. Usually it's Aries are impatient, bold, irascible, lose interest easily, this kind of negative way of thinking about your sign. Actually, you're a sign that provides the spark. You know, you're amazing for that. And yes, you do need to feel gripped to hold your attention, but if something is feeling stale and well beyond its sell-by date, this is a very important time right through to the spring equinox, and when you have that solar eclipse in your sign, the second in this particular series, it is going to be a time for clearing away what's not really working for you. Even if it's some inner blockages about yourself and your thinking in terms of how you're approaching your right to receive praise, acknowledgement, recognition, or are you uncomfortable being in the spotlight? Do you feel ill at ease with responsibility? Or are you someone who soaks all these things up and thrives on those kind of responsibilities? Well, this can be a time where you can really power forwards, but it has to feel right for you. So Taurus, this is a time of year when many of us are setting our intentions, being mindful of our New Year's resolutions. And I think one of the things that this event is going to evoke in you is another piece of encouragement to be bold, to change things up. Your appreciation of stability, continuity is legend in astrology, but that also can at times choke off your passion. So if you're going through the processes in order to maintain that structure, ironically, the sign that's very much to do with structure, because it's your ninth house, that's much more Sagittarian in a way. So it's asking you to be, to show more endeavour, to be much more spontaneous, to do things off the cuff, to shake things up, create greater spontaneity in your situation. But because Mercury is combust with the Sun, if you rush any big decision making, particularly around travel, contracts, connections to people overseas, it could go wrong. Also, if you're seeking to publish a book or review your website or start a new business and be more enterprising, again, it's important not to hurry things too much. But because the three players in your sign are forging really positive links with this event, I actually feel that instinctively you can overcome the more negative potential of Mercury retrograde, but it is about marshalling that part of your nature which can be a little bit impatient at times. And if you get exasperated, you just want to push something through. But pushing something through needs to be taken in the round. And that's what Jupiter's asking you to do. It's asking you to see the big picture of what's important to you as an individual, not get too caught up in the minutiae. So, a superb opportunity for you to widen your horizons, but you need to think it through very carefully. But to be fair, Saturn in the 11th house of your situation is providing a very stabilizing angle, which can help you to reflect carefully, take soundings from friends and advisors. So when you're plotting your future plans, you don't rush them, you do lots of research, and then you approach them with a lot of passion, which you're rarely short of. So Gemini, this event takes on particular significance for you because of the role of Mercury. And as I mentioned in my introduction, with the GEMINI happening later in the day at 6:53 p.m, that can be a fantastic opportunity. So we do need to look at the big picture. For you, this event occurs in house 8, but Pluto has been really providing a lot of lessons and perhaps changes in the 8th house of your situation for many years. In terms of where you're most invested, in terms of your personal connections, the 8th house can be to do with intimacy, of course, but it can also be to do with your long-term finance, and the 8th house can be the things that make weight. So quite a complex journey you've gone through for 15 years. I think you're going to see it all come up to a crescendo by the 20th of January, when the Sun and Pluto are exactly conjunct in their own cazimi, if you like. But then when the Sun and Pluto move on the 21st of January, it really brings in the potential for something much lighter and brighter. And that's going to be augmented once Jupiter moves into your sign on the 25th of May. So I feel that this event with Mercury retrograde is asking you to think very carefully about business and long-term finance, especially anything to do with pensions, insurances, mortgages, legacies. Those are areas that, if you can, really concentrate to make sure all the details are put firmly in place. So what you could be doing over the next 13 weeks is making sure lots of contingencies are really bolted down to the floor. You know, get the paperwork in place. Don't put off something that would then, if circumstances change beyond your control, there wouldn't be provisions in the way that you would like. But of course, let's think about the opportunities. But because there's such a lot of 12th house energy on this event for you, with the Moon, Jupiter and Uranus all gathered there, I feel some kind of awakening is going on. But that awakening is at such a deep level. You're a sign that can really command people through your wit, your humour, your mischievousness. But because of your immutable energy, you can also pivot and avoid looking at things. You know, there's no one like Geminis for doing that. You've only got to look at two very famous politicians in the UK and the US who you can divine for yourself to know how quicksilver wit and an acerbic tongue can be very hard to manage for their opponents. So, but the danger with that for you in terms of your internal world is that, yes, you can create the space from other people peering into your deep psyche, but the key here is with Uranus in the 12th and Jupiter through till the 25th of May, and all this energy in the 8th, you really have to dive deep in terms of your inner world. And if you do, Pluto will reward you by the 21st of January. So Cancer, this event evokes a lot of activity around your 7th house. So ironically for you, this is almost like the autumnal equinox for Aries people, or us all collectively. But seriously, Pluto over the last 15 years has probably brought some very, very big lessons and big changes around your relating sector, but also how you've been setting your boundaries. Being a water sign and essentially very emotional, the energies of the Moon have at times in your life left you feeling very vulnerable and exposed. So what Pluto's been doing the last 15 years is pushing you to develop techniques to protect yourself, but also assert yourself at the same time. Now, because the Sun moves to join up with Pluto in the same sign, but aligns with the Mercury retrograde, and of course that will become exact later on the 22nd with the Cazimi, it is vital that you choose your words with care because of the potential for cross wires. So if there's someone you're interested in at the moment and you're cultivating a relationship and you really like them, I wouldn't rush things. You've got a glorious set of influences in your 11th house. You can have fun, you can be sociable, but just expect there could be some last minute changes around who goes where over the festive season. And even in an existing relationship, because you are a moon-ruled sign, how you feel things can at times cloud the more logical way you connect to others. Mercury in the 7th house is asking us to be a bit more detached, a bit cooler, which is a bit counterintuitive for you. But if you can go with that, there's lots here for you to work with in a very productive way. And it could be that some new alliances are coming in over the next 13 weeks that could be really, really important in a very positive way for you. So Leo, you're the sign of indelible star quality. You know, you're blessed by the Sun as your ruler. The second two decans of your sign, so first 10 degrees Sun, second decan Jupiterian, very buoyant and optimistic. And the third, of course, ruled by Mars, which is very passionate and go-getting. So whichever part of Leo you're born under, you have a lot there to work with. But the last 15 years has seen you have to put some of your talent and flair to one side, or if you've wanted to make the talent and flair work, you've really had to roll up your sleeves and apply yourself, because the sign of Capricorn is about application, it's about perspiration, and it's about patience, sustained effort, and working through things in a bit by bit way. That's because of Saturn. So the fact that Pluto's come into the end in this particular phase, the penultimate phase of its pass through the sign of Capricorn, it's moving on for you, and on the 21st of January, relationship matters are really going to come to the heart of your whole personal universe. But the sixth house can be where we're of service to others. It's very Virgoan, and of course Mercury rules Virgo, so the fact that the retrograde is so close to the Sun but not close enough, so it's possible if you let all that hard work and application you've put in over all those years just slip a little bit, because you're getting caught up in the festivities, having good fun, just at a time when you really need to make sure that all the details are absolutely metronomically working. Absolutely so. So don't rush anything because it seems boring, or it's become tedious, or the burden of supporting another person or a situation, or you've had health issues, or you've been working in a job which is terribly dull and boring. Don't let those things stop you from keep doing what you've learned over those 15 years, because the collective in Taurus linking with this event suggests that some kind of big opportunity can come for you over the next 3 months, and it could be around some kind of new partnership or new connection, and suddenly someone's going to get the awesomeness of what you have to offer in a way that seems to have been pushed to one side during Pluto's very intense passage through the sign of Capricorn. Leo, if you've yet to watch your year 2024 deep dive video, please see the link beneath this video. So Virgo, with Mercury, your ruler, in the mix in your fifth house. Fifth house is about social interaction, where we showcase our talent, our good humour. Obviously for this time of year when people are mixing and mingling, having a very powerful chart with your ruler right at the heart of proceedings looks promising. But of course there is that retrograde. If you are wanting to heat things up with someone that you fancy, Venus in an opposition with Uranus could see a spontaneous attraction or discussion or spark that could be really exciting. But equally, in a relationship that is perhaps a little bit dull, Saturn in your seventh house is asking you to go through things and try to work at the things that maybe are a bit awkward. Neptune, of course, has been creating some magic and mischief in equal measure since 2012. But you do have that collective in Taurus, your fellow Earth sign, in your ninth house, suggesting that if you can look at things in a big way, Jupiter there, and think of how you can bring new information or knowledge into even how you have fun, or how you express your talents and flair. But obviously precision is a very big part of your nature. But maybe the lesson of this whole event is that it's not always so good to be totally caught up in the detail and the things, and actually looking at the big picture and enjoying yourself should be one of your key motives. But the midpoint between the Sun and the Moon, remember, very close to Saturn in the seventh house. So if you're in a relationship which is a bit joyless, that could be under consideration in the next 13 weeks. But if you're solo and wanting to meet someone really you can bond with, I feel Saturn being very close to that midpoint could bring someone in that could be a much longer term player in your situation. Virgo, if you've yet to watch your year 2024 deep dive video, please see the link beneath this video. So Libra, here we are. A big event because, of course, this sees the Sun move into house 4, which has been such a big area of change, possibly conflict, possibly pain over the last 15 years. as Pluto has made its way through Capricorn, as we've discussed many times over. With Mercury in the mix, I just want to explain how Mercury in the fourth house works. It can see us circulate emotions in our minds, which obviously Mercury influences, in a way that's repetitive, but we find it more difficult to actually say how we really feel. And perhaps also Mercury retrograde could see you rush making a view known about family dynamics, an emotional part or component of your situation. So important to be mindful of Mercury's retrograde, but also Mercury retrograde can be an asset because it gives us a chance to revisit and recalibrate and reignite our approach to the particular area that Mercury is influencing. So in your case, where you live, how you live there, and who with. If you work from home and that's something that you haven't been enjoying, Mercury could make you think, look, I need to get back into the office more frequently. If actually you prefer to work from home, maybe that's got to be worked out with a line manager and agreed and signed off. Obviously, there's a lot of push on one hand to reduce the costs of, offices and admin centres, but on the other hand, people have seen that if colleagues are working remotely, it's much more difficult to connect. And obviously Mercury is very much about connections. So I feel that this can be a very helpful event. Venus is of course your ruler and is in a very strong position in terms of money. So could be some sudden costs over the next 13 weeks, but also some exciting unexpected gains. It just depends on your unique situation. But with the midpoint of the event chart in your sixth house, very close to Saturn, it does seem like the sense of duty, which has been so important since Saturn moved to join up with Neptune in March, is not really going to change over the next 13 weeks too much. But you have got a sensational solar eclipse coming in April, and also Jupiter moving in May and aligning in a fabulous trine with Pluto, joining up with Pluto, which moves of course on the 21st of January, and also Venus and Mars are in very strong positions for you in February. So in the latter part of this 13-week period, things can perk up, but I feel that this is going to be a period when immediately you're working through some of the things that you've been working on for a very long time. Keeping the dialogue going is very important. Trying not to be defensive is important, because the fourth house can see us be a bit abrasive if we feel that people are not being sensitive enough to us. And of course you're a natural relator, so you're very skilled at leaning into other people's situations. When you get nothing back, it feels very wounding and very hurtful. But all the lessons that you've been learning with Pluto you can deploy, and it's just managing that Mercury retrograde with that combustion with the Sun. So making sure the Sun doesn't stop you communicating, or you find yourself obsessing about something late into the wee small hours but not actually finding it easy to articulate it to someone because you might be fearful of what they may feel or say or their reaction. But this is where you're being pushed to be more assertive about your side of the deal. So Libra, if you've yet to watch your year 2024 deep dive video, please see the link beneath this one. So Scorpio, the last 15 years for you with Pluto moving through Capricorn, it's been interesting because of course Pluto is your higher octave ruler, your modern ruler. Pluto is about change, transformation. The third house is about our interactions with neighbours, siblings, perhaps our belief systems as opposed to maybe our values, a bit nuanced, different. Definitely the way that we communicate on an everyday basis. But of course Pluto is also about passion, but it can be about power. So your ideas, you've probably represented them with a lot of conviction over the last 15 years. But of course on this event, the planet that rules those everyday communications, Mercury, is in a retrograde and it is combust. So you've got to make sure that the lessons that Pluto's been asking you to learn over those 15 years are not lost because maybe you'll rush something, or maybe someone says something that you don't quite get first time round, but it's very important not to dismiss other people's viewpoints because they don't necessarily conform to your viewpoint. And you may encounter someone who does have a much more conservative view than you, Capricorn, or you may be challenged by someone who thinks you've got quite a conservative view because you're a fixed sign. And when you really invest in something, you tend to identify with it a lot. And therefore, if someone disagrees with you, it can feel quite wounding. So the Mercury retrograde in combustion with this event does need to be handled with care. Now, what about the other planets informing this event? Well, of course, the first thing is the ascendant is in your sign, so that's helpful. But Venus is also in your sign, pushing you, I think, in some ways to really feel your power of attraction. You know, you may not at all times have maximum confidence in the way you look. That tends to be how life is for most of us. We've all got something that we wish was a little bit different. But Venus is actually encouraging you to feel that what you've got is worth strutting. And that opposition to Uranus suggests that someone could be dazzled by you and drawn to you, or, I don't mean this unkindly, want to separate from you. It just depends on your unique circumstances. So discussion, keeping the lines of communication open, very, very important at this time. And with Saturn combining with the midpoint in your 5th house, particularly around a romantic relationship that's ongoing, if things have got a little stale or some dogma has crept in on either side about how things should be, try to get the lines of communication, as I mentioned, working as effectively as you can. And at times, maybe it's really important to think about what are the issues that are worth stressing over. And with Jupiter, the Moon, and Uranus all in your 7th house, they're kind of saying to you, look, celebrate the things you have in common. And if you have slight differences of opinion, particularly to do, this may make you laugh, if you are in a committed relationship, one of you may want a new mode of transport and the other person may not, or some new tech gear, the other person not. That could be something that actually is a bit of a sticking point, but try to find some point of harmony, and this chart suggests that you can do that over the next 13 weeks. But then with Pluto powering into your 4th house with the Sun on the 21st of January, a big shift goes on in your life where it becomes much more about home, family, and emotional strands in your situation. Scorpio, if you've yet to watch your year 2024 deep dive video, please see the link beneath this video. So Sagittarius, the last 15 years has provided quite a lot of challenges, I think, around the topics of self-worth, earning money, the foundations in your life. Saturn, since March the 7th, brought a more serious dimension to where you live. It's at the core of what's going on, and of course is conjunct the midpoint on this event, which is in your 4th house. So it may seem to be about the money, but actually I think it is continue to be about the emotion. But your ruler Jupiter is very close to the Moon, and in the part of your situation which is to do with where you're of service to people, but also the practicalities. So if we divine all this out, there is a lot of earth, but there's some water. So how things feel is important, but how you go about things in the structuring of your approach to resources, the budget, squeezing the most out of what available money you've got, they are going to be important themes over this next 13 weeks. But your ability to communicate and to be bright and breezy is something that cannot be underestimated. And when Pluto moves on the 21st of January, along with the Sun, into your 3rd house, that part of your nature is really going to be reignited. You've been essentially building a house as Pluto made its way through your sign. For the previous 15 years before 2008, that was a time of you really evolving your identity. Then you've been putting in the foundational That was the plan, if you like, the architect's plan. You've now been putting in the footings and the foundations. But once Pluto, along with the Sun, moves into Aquarius on the 21st of January, you're going to start to invite the neighbours round. There's going to be much more interaction. Your gift for knowledge can see you sharing that knowledge with great gusto from the 21st of January. And of course, your ruler Jupiter moves into your opposite sign on the 25th of May. And as we get to the end of May and the start of June, the position of Jupiter and Pluto align in an exact trine. That can be absolutely incredibly enriching for you. And all the hard work that you have been investing on this event, it's just essentially saying, look, Mercury is retrograde in your second house. Money that's owed to you may be slow to be coming in, or it may seem that you're not being valued as much as you could be by certain individuals, or perhaps you're not valuing yourself as much as you could. So that's where the rethinking can go on, and don't let the sun's combustion of Mercury stop you thinking in a sharp way and using the business-like energies of Capricorn to stay resolutely grounded in your approach. Sagittarius, if you've yet to watch your year 2024 deep dive video forecast, please see the link beneath this video. So Capricorn, the sun returning to your sign after an 11-month absence, is definitely a time to pop the bubbly, whether it's the alcoholic variety or the elderflower variety, because what this is going to do is bring you into the present in terms of your energy. You do still have Mars in the 12th house, and Mercury is going to return to your 12th house on the 23rd, and Venus pitches up there on the 29th of December. So a lot of 12th house energy still around. There are going to be squares between Mercury and Mars and Neptune and Venus and Saturn as we go into the new year. So still being aware of the shadow side of your situation, your personality, your approach to things, some of the things that feed your insecurities or make you feel uncertain, or some of the people that you don't feel you can quite trust. There is some of that still going on, to be honest, and I feel there will be through this 13-week period. But essentially, with Mercury in a combustion with the Sun, you must continue to think nimbly and not let the desire to dominate a situation out of a need to protect your ego, if I'm honest. It's important that you let Mercury have its voice. That's what it's about, the planet of talk and thought. And don't sort of overpower it because you are feeling a little bit more opened up. Mars in the 12th house in particular is quite tricky. Your ruler, of course, is applying to the midpoint on this event, which is in Pisces, the third house of everyday communication. But that's obviously the area that can cause some mischief as you go into 2024, because I feel that there is going to be a big shift for you. The last 15 years has seen you really evolving, but it's been brutal at times. But with Pluto moving out of your sign in this penultimate phase into Aquarius on the 21st of January, along with the Sun, you will start to see how far you have evolved and what that's worth. But it's vital you value your worth. And maybe there are some people around you that you don't feel they're perhaps giving you what you need or want, but actually it's because you're moving on. And it's not necessarily all on that side of the equation. It's more that you're evolving and you're going to be meeting and discovering new people in such an exciting way. And there's some fabulous opportunities in the first 5 months of 2024 for you to use your flair, your love of a good laugh, your personality power to the maximum of effect. But it's also important to closet the parts of yourself or life that you do find a little bit awkward. Capricorn, if you've yet to watch your year 2024 deep dive video, please see the link beneath this video. So Aquarius, for you, the Sun moves into house 12, joining up with Mercury in house 12 in a retrograde, in a combustion. That's pretty awkward. it can feel that maybe you'll lose your desire to connect to people, or you'll feel that people are withholding from you. People that you would expect to hear from don't seem to be in touch. That could make you feel exposed and vulnerable. But in actual fact, there's a big shake-up going on for you beyond the arrival of Pluto, and it does feature largely on the sign of Sagittarius. So as you go into 24, Sagittarian energy is asking you to really set free that part of your nature that loves to mix and mingle, loves to forge connections. And they can be all sorts of connections. You have a unique ability, particularly if you're born in the first 10 degrees of Aquarius, to be very non-judgmental about the type of people you will connect to. And there's going to be some new people coming in, but they need to have some solid values to stick around. So there could be some flirtations with new friendships or group dynamics, and not all of them are going to stick around in 2024, because really until the 25th of May, you're still working with the help of Jupiter and Uranus on the more emotional and home-based side of your situation. So if you just find yourself needing some time to just withdraw a little bit over Christmas itself, it wouldn't entirely be a surprise, but I don't think you're going to withdraw for long because of the collective that develops in the sign of Sagittarius. And I think New Year's Eve in particular can be very jolly and bubbly for you. But if there are parts of your psyche, or your fears, or your vulnerabilities, or the parts of yourself that you find a bit awkward to look at, if there is bits of that around you still, or someone shares an observation about you that really surprises you, how they see you, which may not be how you see yourself, all of that can be really quite tough, but actually can liberate you once you embrace those things. So bring the more psychological, spiritual, and emotional side into the logical side of yours being as much as you can, and that sets you up perfectly to burst into 2024. And speaking of that, Aquarius, if you've yet to watch your deep dive ultimate year 2024 Aquarius video, please see the link beneath this video. So Pisces, although the Sun moves into the 11th house on this event, very much to do with fraternity, planning your future, your higher spiritual destiny, but also your friendships and the way you interact with people, your network. Because Mercury is in a retrograde and is combust with the Sun, very important over this next 13 weeks that you really work at making sure that you stay in touch the best you can. But I feel that there's going to be a lot of new connections for you professionally as you burst into 2024. But the overall energy of this event is based on your sign. The midpoint between the Sun and the Moon, the yin-yang, is in your sign and is conjunct Saturn in your sign. So you have a great opportunity to be at the heart of any connections you have. So I feel you need to take the initiative. Don't be passive. That can be part of your nature at times. You know, sometimes you can run very, very giving, and at other times you can retreat and appear to others to be very cool and detached. So it's an opportunity to not let Saturn shackle your passion or the part of your nature that needs to express itself, particularly if you're born early in the sign of Pisces. However, the next 13 weeks does also have massive opportunities, particularly with your traditional ruler Jupiter combining with this Moon position and the Moon aligning with the Sun. Oh, it's absolutely fabulous. That points towards some great conversations if you can keep the dialogue going. And Mercury retrograde in that combustion could see you a little bit resistant to doing that, and maybe it's because Saturn is asking you to concentrate on what's essential, totally understandable, but we all need other people. No person is an island, and that's the clue to your potential progress over the next quarter of a year. Pisces, if you've yet to watch your year 2024 deep dive video, please see the link beneath this video. It's been a real pleasure being with you and exploring the winter solstice 2023. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm wishing you all the best for this exciting cardinal quadrant 4. All the best for Christmas and the new year. And please do like, comment, share or subscribe.